Hey everyone, Dan Baumann here with John Schrader and our guest Diane Gilson. Diane, thanks for being here today.
Great to be here, Dan.
Cool. And John, I see you're in lovely northern Minnesota up by the Split Rock Lighthouse.
Yeah, my wife and I went up there a couple weeks ago.
Yeah,
so we kind of jumped the gun on the fall colors, but
is that a picture? Is that a picture you took, or is that a stock image? It's a great shot.
A picture we took.
Yeah, I bet the colors are just blooming like crazy up there right now.
Yep.
Cool. Well, we're on here with Diane, and that Diane is going to talk about job costing. Now, Diane and I go back quite a ways. We've been friends for a long time. We started out doing a whole bunch of online stuff, online websites and marketing and all sorts of things like that. I don't know how we met again. And we've just been good friends ever since. And now we're in a mastermind together, which is really cool. And I've always admired the way that you go about helping your clients really straighten out their business, with the job costing and the accounting information that you provide them and the coaching that you do. It's like, it's really amazing what you've done for businesses. And I've talked to a number of them that have used your services and how they've really grown their companies. So because of that, because of the things that you've done. So it's pretty cool.
Thanks, Dan. There's a huge amount to be gained from having really good numbers to look at.
Numbers, yeah. If you can measure it, you can manage it.
Exactly.
So that's what it's all about. All right. So you guys on the call, feel free to add comments and let us know that you're on and say hi. And we'll just kind of move forward here. Diane's got a lot of great information to cover today about job costing and how it works and why you need it, and et cetera, et cetera. And we'll jump into that here quickly. John, you got anything you want to add about that?
Nope.
You're good to go. All right, cool. So, Diane, I'd kind of like to start out with a quick little personal question for everybody. And, what's one of your favorite hobbies, your passion? What are you really excited about doing when you get up in the morning, other than work? I know you love your work.
Right. Well, you know what? I've always been a reader ever since I was a kid. And I just absolutely love reading, but lately I very seldom have time to sit down and open a book. But I do have Audible, and Audible is, I've got several hundred books in my Audible library. So as I'm buzzing around doing other things, I get a chance to listen to Audible and continue to learn. And, I really like business books. I like marketing books. I like, believe it or not, I don't very seldom read accounting books because I do that all day long. But I do have a very soft spot in my heart for science fiction.
Okay, cool.
Always been a big science fiction fan.
Hey, Mike. Hi, Frank. Cool. Yeah, I think you told me the other day you had 400 books in your Audible account. So
yeah, exactly.
You're definitely a good client for Audible. So that's awesome.
Yeah,
I do that a lot too. When I'm riding my bike and stuff, I'm always listening to books and driving. Don't waste the time.
Exactly.
I just listened to a great novel lately, which was really nice. So The Last Flight, it was called. I really enjoyed it. Anyway, moving on here. So how'd you get into this industry to do this kind of stuff? I mean, what led what your journey that led you up to this point where you're on our call today?
Yeah, it was a pretty circuitous journey.
It's a big word, man.
Yeah, circuitous. You like that? So, meaning unique and unusual. So basically, when I started to go to college, I thought I wanted to teach English, and found out that at that time was not a great time to be getting into the teaching market. So I left school for a little while. I also, in the meantime, had learned while I was in college and even in between how to be a radio DJ. So I did top 40 and underground shows for a while on a couple different radio stations.
Oh my goodness, yeah. Back in the old days, huh?
Exactly. My online name, or my on radio name, was Diane Patterson, because everybody has to have their own special radio name, of course. Cool. And then in the meantime, when I was ready to get back into school, once I decided what I wanted to do, I worked for a place called Olin Mills Photography Studio, and I ran sales rooms, hiring and training people. And I had to do reports. I had to do financial reports every week, and I found out I just loved it. So when I did get back in school, I got my accounting minor, and then later got the equivalent of an accounting major. I then earned my CPA somewhere along in there. I also worked as a bookkeeper, and I earned my CPA. I spent 3 years in public accounting, and then I spent 13 years in banking, doing accounting related things, including internal auditing. And then I started my business in 1994. I've always loved management accounting, the
Nice.
side where people can look at their numbers.
94. You've been doing this a while. So
Exactly.
yep, Build Your Numbers. I think it's a really good name for your website, buildyournumbers.com, because that's what you're helping people do.
Thank you.
Yeah. Straighten out their numbers and build on them. Build that bottom line. Cool. So, what do you, when you get up every day, what kind of things drive you to help your clients? What is it that magic bullet, that kind of, or button, I should say, not bullet, but,
yeah. When I first started my company, and I knew I wanted to work in the management accounting arena, okay, as opposed, I did taxes for a little bit, but that wasn't why I went into business. And so I found I just really want to be support for internal company owners to do the things that they do, okay? And it took me about 2 weeks after I started my business to realize that my ideal connection was with people in construction, because they need that management accounting. And in a meeting that I was at, one of the builders' wives mentioned to me, gosh, you really need to go over to the local home builders association and talk to those guys. They really need help. So it was just almost right out of the gate, I started working with people in construction. And the big thing is I just really admire, that's why it's such a good match for me. I really admire what they do, that ability to create in physical form what they conceptualize. Something that's on paper, they create it. And of course, creating homes and family spaces, I really think of that as a higher calling. And if I can support people who are doing that, gosh, it makes me feel like I'm fulfilling my mission to help them fulfill their mission.
Yeah. And that's, it's what you do is so important, because so many businesses get started with a good tradesperson working for another company, or they're just out doing their thing, and a neighbor comes over and says, hey, I'd like to do something. And next thing you know, they're in business. They're a general contractor with no business training or business acumen. And so they just move forward. And that's why we see such a high failure rate in the construction industry, is because of that there is no formal training, and people don't necessarily know they need it until it's too late. So that's really cool. So
Exactly.
Certainly appreciate you.
And that's the case in a lot of professions. Even doctors, they don't get training in how to run a business, or
architects, designers, all of the above. Yeah.
They just think they're going to hand it off to their accountant and it'll magically all be taken care of.
Yeah. Isn't that the truth? Well, so you really focus hard on job costing. I know that's a big part of what you do in your business. We had Brian on last week. He talked a lot about different business systems. And I know job costing is one of those systems. You've got a little presentation you want to give to us, show us today. Why don't we just jump into that?
Okay.
And I'll let you run through that. We're good on time. We've got,
sure.
Where's my time here? We've got, where's my timer? Oh yeah.
About 50 minutes.
Got 50 minutes. Okay.
Okay.
So let's go ahead and bring up your slideshow, and everybody that's on the call, real quickly, I'll show you. And even if you're watching this after the live event here, you'll see a link below the video where you can get the handout and some bonuses that Diane has for you. The URL is buildyournumbers.com /Dan B. That kind of lets Diane know who
actually, if they start at Dan, they'll end up where they need to go.
Just Dan, not Dan B?
Just Dan. Yep.
Oh, so I've got this wrong. I thought it was Dan B.
Well, they'll eventually end up over at the Dan B page. But if they just type in buildyournumbers.com /Dan.
All right.
That way, that's easy to remember. They don't have to They don't
Skip
even have
the
to remember
B.
your last name, Dan.
All right, cool. Skip the B, and I'll make that change to the link later, but it should work fine. I think
Yeah.
the buttons I've got on here work just fine anyway. So
Okay.
all right, cool. And so if you're viewing this on the viewing page on our website, it's below the video, and if you're on the YouTube or Facebook or something like that, it's right below the video too as a link. So Diane, why don't you go ahead and I'll just have at it here.
Well, I'm just going to mention before we get started that job costing, it's not like it's a whole separate thing. It's actually, it sits inside your accounting system. If you set your accounting system, your overall company accounting system up in the right way, your job costing sits inside that. So sometimes people think of job costing as a big separate module or a whole separate software system. So just a little clarification on the front end there.
And with that, I mean, QuickBooks Desktop has all of the job costing links and everything built in. I know Job Cost Online didn't have that for the longest time, and now they've got something. But
something, yes. We'll leave it there. They have something.
All right.
Okay.
It ain't much, but it's something.
Exactly. Okay. So depends on what you want to do. You always have to begin with the end in mind in terms of what do you want your output, your internal information systems to look like. Okay. And so we generally still are recommending desktop from that standpoint.
Yeah.
Without getting into more details.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so one of the things you'll see in the title, how to dramatically increase your profits using the magic of job costing. And lots of times we also add, without hiring more people, without selling more, and without working harder. Okay, so keeping that in mind as we move through this. And so if you use your job costing in the right way, you can create really a pretty epic increase in your gross profits by looking at the numbers and making the kinds of decisions that the numbers are going to, they're going to point you down the road. And of course, the hard way to do things is not to have your numbers and to be guessing as you go. The easier way, even though on the front end it takes a little more work to get things set up, on the longer term, the easy way is going to be a much better way to go. So some of the things that we see is that company owners might be thinking is, why should I care about job costing? Why not just assign all my materials costs to a materials cost account, or all my payroll to a single payroll expense account? So just, this is what I've heard from people over the years. And isn't it a lot of extra work to have somebody sit down and enter a job name and a job code for the job phase to the transactions? Sometimes that might feel like a lot of extra work. And can I just keep an eye on the checkbook? And, at year end, my accountant is going to tell me how much my company made last year. So maybe if you're really lucky and you get your taxes done by, for companies, generally it's going to be March 15th. In many cases, that gets put off until September. Yeah. You get to find out what happened in 2019.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Too late.
And is it really worth my time to implement an internal job costing system? Lots of people say, gosh, I'm really busy. I just can't take the time to do something like that. And is it even really worth it?
Yeah.
Okay. So what I see lots of times is people, what is it? The ready, fire, aim approach.
Oh God. Yeah.
We'll get there faster. Okay. We're going to get there faster. We're going to drive all night and we're going to go down a back road, and, I don't have any headlights. Okay. Oh, and my GPS is out. That's kind of what happens lots of times when people are running their business. They're out in the field and they're just basically they're working in the dark and operating in the dark. And unfortunately, that concept of, okay, I need more profits, I'm going to sell more, I'm going to ignore the details, I'm just going to charge full speed ahead, and that's going to leave you in the dark. Okay.
Yeah, it does.
So, I'm sure you've talked to people over the years, Dan, that,
gosh.
Well, they're probably not in business anymore, but
or a different business,
or a different business, or they're working for somebody else at that point. So it's just never going to be as rewarding or safe or efficient as if you're out driving down a sunny, smooth highway with all your clearly marked signage And I kind of love this picture because I went, you never know when those kangaroos are going to hop out
Yeah,
at you.
yeah. Speed
So,
bumps or all this other stuff that'll get in your way. But yeah. So,
yeah,
good analogy. The right side picture, that's your job costing in action. I guess that'd be one way to look at it.
yeah.
Yeah.
And the job costing can help you spot the kangaroos.
Oh
So,
yeah, I remember back in the days of contracting, working on a job, and I was always very good at job costing. I really kept track of everything. But once in a while, I'd get something going and I wasn't quite sure what the costs were or where I was at on the job. Maybe I was a little behind on something. It's really hard. I mean, it really takes a toll on the brain when you can't keep track of all that stuff. And yeah, so
yeah, that's the mental load. And I don't even think I talk about that very much in this particular presentation, but there's
yeah,
a mental load when you're trying to keep track of everything in your head. And, if you're only doing one or two jobs and you're in the middle of them all the time,
yeah,
it's possible. Okay.
yeah.
You might still feel a little confused, but boy, once you start getting beyond two or three jobs, keeping all that in your head, I mean, why would you even want to?
Oh my gosh, no, yeah, and yeah, like you said, if someone doing a few jobs, maybe even doing up to $1 million a year in volume, maybe the owner can keep track of everything in their head or on the spreadsheet or scraps of paper or whatever, and that works. And if that works and they're doing business and it's going fine, okay, good. At least they're keeping track of something somehow, but you can't grow beyond that.
Right.
Unless you have a good job cost system in place.
We usually see people do the shift. Part of it has to do with the number of jobs that they're doing. Okay.
Right.
And, but if you look at dollar volume, we see people starting to realize that things can be out of control without them realizing it.
Yep.
When they hit about the 600,000, 700,000 range. I mean, of course, it's not all about dollars. It's about number of jobs and complexity and that type of thing. So I guess if you were doing one $700,000 job per year, that would be one thing. So it's a combination, number of jobs, complexity, dollars, and so on.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of things that go into it.
Exactly.
But none of those other things will work unless this is in order.
Right, exactly. And yes, we find that people can't grow. They cap themselves off at a certain amount if they can't keep track of the numbers as well. And that's what a lot of people that approach us are saying, I'm just to the point where I can't sell more because I'm afraid I'm losing money.
Yeah.
So one of the many ways, okay, but today we'll be focusing on 4 or 5 of those, is you can reduce your cost of production by using job cost estimate versus actual reports. And so there's really nothing that's worse than finding out, 1 or 2 or 3 months or maybe next year, if you wait for your outside accountant, after your jobs have closed, that you lost money on the job. Or maybe you just squeaked by with just a minimal profit. Okay, so you probably feel like that little girl sitting there. And instead, you can set up your job cost system to report your estimate versus actual cost and income as you move through each job. In that way, you're going to be able to spot variances and correct problems before they spin out of control. So if you're staying on top of what's going throughout the job, that's going to make a really big difference as the job progresses. And sometimes, it's too late. You find out your estimate was wrong, but maybe then you can shift a few things around and still try to get that job back under control rather than finding out after the fact that things just really went sideways and you didn't do something about it, maybe when you could have.
Again, I always come back to you can manage what you measure. And if you're measuring the job properly throughout the process, you can see those bumps in the road that are going to get you.
Right. Okay. And so by using those reports, you're actually setting up what we call a control loop. Okay. So, or here it's labeled up as an improvement circle where your plan, which is your estimate, and then you go ahead and you implement and measure, you evaluate, and then you improve. So it's not just a current job that you're looking at the estimate versus actual report for, but also you can go in after the fact or even spot things, processes that can be improved as for future jobs,
Mhm.
okay, as overall improvement for yourself. So consistently using those estimate versus actual reports makes it easy to find out where you can reduce your direct costs, okay, or
Right.
get better estimating in place.
Yeah.
So you should, okay, if you're being diligent, looking at things, and diligent doesn't mean spending hours a week. It means just looking at these reports regularly, weekly, bi-weekly, for a short period of time, numbers are going to start jumping out at you.
Right.
And if you're doing this, you should be able to enhance your gross profit by at least 5% or more. And I'm talking 5% of your gross revenue. Okay. So if you have your calculator handy and think about what's your annual revenue, that's probably going to be a significant amount. And I'd like to lay in and just say a $1 million company. It makes it easy for people to, wrap their head around it. If you're a $500,000 company, it'd be about half of the 50,000. If you're a $2 million company, it'd be 100,000. So, just that 5%, that's a lot of dollars.
Nice chunk
Okay.
of change.
Exactly. You could have a really nice lunch for that.
Very nice.
in a very exotic location, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So then there's another way, or item number 2, is to use your job costing to locate and charge for lost or invisible cost. So, it happens upon occasion, and I have found this working with clients that they'll miss invoicing something. So let's say there's a cost that went to a job, they weren't watching their job cost reports, and that cost was $700 for something that came through. And so, gosh, that just comes right out of your pocket. You just gave your customer a $700 gift. You could probably find something pretty nice for that, right?
Yep.
And the lost revenue, though, accompanying that, it's not just the $700 now that's coming straight out of your pocket, but in fact, let's say you had a 33% markup, okay? That means you should have charged the customer $933.
Right.
Now, what does that mean? Okay, so it's easy to just talk about numbers, but talking about what does that mean to you as a person in your life? So maybe that's $933 that's not going into your retirement account. Okay. Or maybe you've got kids in school. Now your daughter has to go out and work that many more hours to pay for her tuition. Okay. Something that you can't support. Okay. And maybe you still have some debt that needs to be paid off. Well, that starts multiplying the number even more because you haven't reduced your debt. It means you're still continuing to pay interest. So there are some real human costs involved in not keeping track of those numbers and letting those things fall through the cracks. So maybe it's just $100, maybe it's $1,500, but if you're not doing job costing, you can't even see it.
You won't know. Plus, you have to go out and sell that again, make that up again to get back to zero. It's just like, so you got to go do it over to get back to zero, and that's not even true either.
No, it's a very far-reaching ripple effect.
Yeah.
Okay. So
it's scary. It really is scary when you really think about that and how vulnerable people are when they're not tracking things properly.
Exactly. And the estimate versus actual reports that we just talked about would also help you if you're getting your estimates in place. That's going to help you look for and spot those things. Maybe your vendor hasn't sent you the bill yet. Okay, so before you wrap up that job, if you've got estimate versus actual reports, it also helps to catch this type of thing. So it's a synchronized system that each piece and part helps you with the next part.
Yeah.
Okay. So the job costing is going to reveal every outlay, assuming you're doing it properly. Okay. Your payroll, what we call labor burden, the extra costs that accompany employees, your materials, your contractor, and other costs that are related to the jobs. So for T&M jobs, for time and materials jobs, QuickBooks, for instance, QuickBooks Desktop has a pop-up box, and you can just click those things off and add them right straight into your invoice. And if it's a change order, maybe you've got a fixed price job, but you're still, for those change orders, you're likely going to be invoicing as you move through the jobs. So it's just really time to stop those invisible and costly gifts to your client. Okay. I mean, you love your clients, right?
Yeah, people want to be nice. Yeah,
Yeah,
I get it.
exactly. Well, if you want to do that, just go out and buy them a present. You know,
Yeah.
they'll enjoy it. You know, they'll realize that you've just made them this really nice gift. Okay.
You'll feel good because you're actually giving a gift instead of giving away something.
Exactly. Exactly. So the idea is, if you're in business, the idea is that you and your customer are both treated fairly.
Yeah.
Okay. And so we have our little fairly building blocks. So depends on you as to whether you're going to tip the yes or the no. Okay. So, and if you do no, it means you're the one that's not being treated fairly.
Right.
Now, I'm going to do some math for you here.
Okay.
And try to not get too heavy into it. But the first thing what I'd like to do is show you that I'm showing you some differences here. There will be 4 of them. So the first thing is I'm showing you with a winner job and a loser job. And of course, if you're doing a loser job, you're kind of in that high risk arena, because you can see here that our revenue is the same, but our costs of production are very different, which gives us, in one case, on our winner job, we're making $125,000. On our loser job, we just lost $50,000. That's going to net us out to $75,000.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And overall for the company, you're going, well, yeah, but I've got a 7.5% gross profit on that. So, I mean, you're not you're not dead in the water at this point. And of course, some people, unfortunately, it ends up their winners and their losers leave them in the negatives. But you know what happens more often is that they have some winners and some losers, and we'll see what happens as we move through these things. I also added something else interesting in here. I thought, well, let's just speculate and say that each one of those jobs cost you 120 hours of your time. Okay, decent sized jobs, $500,000 jobs. So what did you earn per hour? Well, you earned $313, which sounds like a lot, but of course, you know, you've got other things going on in your company.
Right, right.
So let's look at a different scenario. Let's say that you combine that winner job instead with a low profit job. Okay, your low profit job, you know, you squeak by at 5%. And so now you've almost doubled your income. And if we say the same number of hours, you've earned $625 an hour. Wow. Let's look at a third scenario. Okay. And of course, this is all speculative. I mean, I'm just doing the math. You'd have to do the math for yourself.
Right,
but
right.
Let's say that we're only going to do our winner job. We just leave that. You know, sometimes you hear folks, consultants talk about, you know, you just have to walk away from jobs. Michael Stone talks about that regularly.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Okay, so here, let's decide we're just going to do one job, and we're going to make it the winner job. We're going to focus on it. And, but of course, we don't have to spend quite as much time on it, 120 hours. And look, we have made a little less than if we did the 2 jobs. Okay, we made 125 versus 150, but look at our hourly rate, what we earned.
Yeah.
So that kind of proves the case of walking away from a low profit job or a loser job is you're way ahead. Look at how that compares with the first one. Yeah. When you had a loser job. Okay. So that's pretty low risk. All right.
The key is, how do you spot those loser jobs?
That is something that comes, I'm sure, with experience, as well as looking at your numbers. When you look at your numbers historically, you can say, you know, every time we do this particular type of work, we lose money, or we only make a small percentage. That's how you find out. Okay. Other than gut feel.
For me, as a small contractor, it was just me and I had a few people. When I did larger jobs, you know, 200,000 above, and this was a long time ago. That was a huge, you know, that'd be 400,000 now. Those are horrible jobs for me. Because they took too long and a lot of other things. But when I did my, you know, $40,000, $50,000 kitchens and room additions, remember, this is back in the mid 90s. God, I did great margins on those, and they were fun to do. You're in and out, and God, So yeah, so over time I looked at that and said, yeah, no more big jobs.
Right. Yeah, you learn, okay, by looking at your numbers.
Yeah. So
And yeah, you also touch base with how you feel about doing them, which is what you were talking about as well.
And I think you see a lot of contractors wanting that, their eyes get big when they get a big job, maybe, I'm going to get this $1 million job or something like that. Be careful, man. Be really careful. Those kind of jobs can absolutely put you out of business.
Yeah, so measuring, and I did put the notations of risk in here. Keeping an eye on the risk factors that go along with these jobs is also part of the decision-making process.
Yeah.
So let's look and see one other final option that we could be looking at. Let's say that we're able to do 2 winner jobs because we've learned which kinds of jobs are making money for us. Okay. And you can see the results.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You got 2 winner jobs. You brought them in on target. You now are looking at 250,000 for those 2. And you actually earn the same rate per hour, 1,042, but look at your bottom line difference.
Yeah.
Okay. So looking at the first one versus the last one, Dan, which company do you want to be running?
Okay. Yeah, I think the last one.
Okay.
Now, John, you're probably thinking the same thing, I bet, right?
Well, actually, I'm thinking the third one. That way, if I could do that with super low overhead, then I only have to work, not that long.
Yeah, you're still making an okay living. Yeah.
Yeah, and those are the kinds of decisions you get to make. Go ahead, John.
You got to keep that overhead down, though.
Yeah.
That's the trick.
And that was always my goal as a contractor. I did it for 20 years, and my goal is always not to be a big company. It's to be a profitable small company.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that pretty well. So it works if you focus on that. Increase your profit margins, not your volume.
Right. And I find lots of times consultants kind of talk about that. Okay. But being an accountant, of course, I lean towards wanting to show people the math. Okay. And you have to be able to do the math yourself. You have to look at your own numbers. But these are just illustrate by doing the math, shows you what you can do by doing your own math. Okay. By tracking your own numbers.
Right.
Okay. All right. Okay, so this is where it leads into how do you shift into higher gross profit work? Okay, so the next thing you can do is you can track. We have a way of doing that in the background in your QuickBooks desktop, types of work. So we can run reports that say, well, here's residential versus commercial, or here are decks versus kitchens. Here are additions versus something else. Here's the work that's done in this city versus in that city. Okay. So you can track types of work. And if you could shift your business mix, which is, again, a variation kind of on the prior slide, we're moving through a progression here. But if you can shift your business mix to perform more of your higher profit work and none of the lower profit work, now that doesn't happen overnight. Okay. But let's look at the math again. And then I promise after this slide, we're done with the math, okay? But for $1 million company, if you've got type A jobs and you're making 25%, and in type B jobs, you're making 11%, we're using the same $500,000, okay? You'll see that you're coming in at an 18% gross profit margin, okay? Now, John mentioned overhead. All of these just have to do really, since we're talking about job costing, we just deal with the gross profit. And yes, overhead is another whole topic that maybe one of these days we can get together and talk about again.
That'd be kind of fun.
Yeah,
exactly. You got a lot of topics.
A bunch of questions about that.
What's that?
I was going to ask a bunch of questions about overhead.
Well, we could
tell another day.
Well, if we've got time today, we can do it, or we can maybe just set up another time to explore that side.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, you've got 3 more slides after this, so I think we'll have time for that.
Okay, good. Yeah, we're moving right along through it. Are there any questions or anything we need to
not at this point
talk about? Okay. So then let's say we shift everything over. We've learned, okay, and it might take us a couple years to change our advertising mix, our sales approach, etc. But it might take us a while to get there, to make that shift. It's not, you don't do this overnight. But let's say now we're 2 years further down the road, and you can move in your $1 million company everything over to a 25% gross profit model. Okay, you're not doing any of those low profit jobs that I laugh about them, and sometimes I call them piranha jobs. They're just
Eat you
nibbling away,
alive. Yep.
nibbling away at you.
Yeah.
Now you're in a 25% gross profit margin, and look at the difference here. You've got a $70,000 difference. Your gross profit percentage has increased 7%, but as a proportion, okay, you've actually increased your income and your gross profit percentage by 39%, almost a 40% increase.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you have to ask yourself, is it time for a change? Am I going to keep doing things that old way and, doing the treadmill and doing it over and over again? Or maybe we want to do things in a different way. So you can use a combination of these particular things, these last 4 specific progressive processes, to add 10% or more to your gross profit. So we already talked about the 5%, but when you start shifting things around, as you saw in that last slide, that even has the potential for more. Okay. So just thinking about, and again, lots of times people have to really sit down and say, well, what would that mean in terms of dollars for me? And if you look at your own revenue, okay, and say, if I could increase based on my revenue, if I could add 10% to my gross profit, what's that going to look like? So let's say if on average you were able to go from 13% to 23%, or from 15 to 25%, or 18 to 28. Okay, by using a combination of these things, and I haven't even touched on everything. Okay, because maybe if you do certain things, you're going to be able to be a specialist, okay, and charge a higher rate. There are a variety of pieces and parts that enter into this, but if people are really managing their numbers, I fully believe that these kinds of changes are possible. And again, the concept of not having to hire more people, we're not talking about selling more or having to work harder. It's managing by the numbers that you're seeing. So if you had 500,000 in gross sales, that 10% increase looks like 50,000. Your daughter's not going to have to go work her way through school. Okay. You might have, if you've got $1 million, you're talking 100,000. And another big thing to remember is this isn't a one-time return.
Right.
Okay. This is going to happen year after year after year for you. So you have to say, is this worth the investment? Well, I might say, hey, if it cost you $100,000 and you broke even in the first year and then you made another 100,000 every year after that, that's a pretty good investment.
Yeah.
But of course, it's not going to cost you as much as that to put your system in.
Not.
No. Okay, so if you take the right kinds of actions, okay, and you make these changes. Now, again, I'm trying to turn this into human terms for people. You're probably going to be able to find something interesting to do with that money every year. So maybe you get to buy that car or boat or plane that you've been looking at for years. Okay. Always that thing off in the future that's in the back of your mind that you really wish that you could get, but it's even too hard to really think about it because you just know it's not possible. Well, if you had an extra 100,000 a year, it very well might be. And on the tax side, yeah, you're going to be paying some extra taxes. So yeah, you might not net out that amount that we've been talking about, but it'll get you a long ways towards what you'd like to do. And maybe, and unfortunately, I see so many people in the industry that haven't really done very much for themselves for a retirement fund, somehow they think, oh, I'm going to sell my business or whatever, but you really need to be putting some money aside as you move through your working years. Okay. Maybe you're the kind of person that has a commitment to a church or a charity, something like that. And it'd be really nice for a lot of people to be able to give more, give it back to the community or give it to their favorite causes. Okay. And you can't really do that if you're just squeaking by.
Right.
Okay. Maybe you want to take soon, if you can, once we get past our current time frame, take people, your family off on a luxury vacation. And even now, what I'm reading about is a lot of people are hiring and going off to remote locations and, still staying socially distanced, but in a really nice place.
Yeah.
Okay. So it doesn't mean you can't travel at all. You just have to find the right cool place to go to.
Yep.
So, okay. And if you have any debt hanging out there, what kind of a load you're carrying along with you with that debt. So when you start getting extra earnings and you get that debt paid off, that's a huge burden off your back. And you'd be surprised what an outlook change happens when you can get rid of that. So it's nice to not be a slave to that debt any longer. So, it's each person has their own set of goals, but I think it's worth going back in and refocusing on your vision list, why you went into business on the front end. And if you're not having those things happen for you, it's probably really worth taking a look at your numbers.
Right.
So, so if you can spot and use that combination, then you're going to be in good shape. Okay. There's one other strategic benefit. I didn't label this up with a number on it, but what you can do is you can start using this kind of information, and you can use the knowledge that you have now to make strategic and even longer lasting changes in your company's business model. Okay. Instead of being in reactionary mode and, doing it, as the saying goes. Okay. Now you can sit down and look, you can start spotting trends and decide, where do I want to go from here? So you might want to choose to scale down to fewer, but more consistently profitable jobs. So Dan, you talked about that. That was something that you chose to do.
I work hard at that. Yeah.
Okay.
It worked well for me.
Okay, great. And that's what some people, rather than growing. Okay.
Right.
You might decide to grow your company after you get a better profit margin in place. Now, I'm going to stop and take a little aside here. So many people think that they're going to earn more profits by selling more. Okay. They say, well, I'm at $1 million. I need to sell next year. I'm going to sell $1.2 million. And the next year, $1.4 million. And that's going to increase my profits. Well, unfortunately, as companies sell more, lots of times their profitability percentages decline because then there are extra costs that go along with it. And that's a very dangerous mode to be in. And you and I have talked about this, Dan, where there's that, what we call the dead zone. And that's that spot where you're trying to increase your company size, sell more and so on, but you end up with extra costs. And if you're not right on top of your numbers to know exactly what's going on, that's a spot where a lot of companies can go out of business.
Yeah,
okay?
you can't grow through that. I've seen so many companies grow themselves right out of business. They don't have their systems in place, but they take on a lot more sales, and then by the time you get to 2-3 million, they've totally lost control of everything, and because they can't track anything. And next thing you know, they're done.
I had a client a while back, and I just loved the phrase. He says, "Well, we don't want to grow broke."
There you go.
So you don't want to grow broke. So the idea is you have to get your margins under control, and not just under control, but you need to have excellent margins. Okay. And then if you're going to grow, you can do it very slowly, but your biggest bang for the buck is to make sure that your $500,000 to $1 million size company has really good profit margins. Then if you want to grow, you have to make sure and check to make sure that as you grow, you can still maintain those profit margins.
Yeah.
Okay, rather than having them shrink. And that's what I think a lot of people think is they think, well, okay, if I'm doing more volume, I can have a lower margin and still make more money. It just doesn't work well. You need to sit down and, if nothing else, just do the math ahead of time and say, what else? What are my other costs going to be? And so on. So.
Mike says here, you mean there's a path that is not reactionary mode? Yay! And yes, there is. And yeah, again, I've worked with a lot of guys a lot of people that, they wear a lot of hats, and then the people say, yep, I'm going to wear my firefighter hat all day long because I'm going to be going out putting out fires all day long. It's just like,
yeah, I'll have to get a picture of somebody wearing a firefighter hat.
Yeah, so
spraying the hose.
And then Mike says he goes for quality projects over volume in his design business. Mental burnout equals mistake. So very true, Mike.
Oh yeah,
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, those 90-hour weeks can wear on you.
Yeah, tell me about it. Been there, done that.
And you might decide, okay, I mentioned this a little bit earlier, you might decide to focus on a really favorite niche or niche, however you pronounce it. Either the riches are in the niches or the riches are in the niches.
I was a general contractor, but I focused on porches and decks. That was my main advertising, was those kinds of projects. So I sold a lot more of those than I did kitchen and bath remodels and basement remodels. And I got really good at porches, and I just had my best margins on those. So
specializing. I mean, you become better. You know all of the ins and outs. You know all the potential problems. You know how to sidestep them. You get your procedures in place. Yeah, and you can charge more. Okay. So because then you become known for that particular thing, and the synergy of all these pieces and parts start working together for you.
Yeah, exactly.
So, just regardless of which one of these approaches, and I mean, there are other things that we haven't really delved into deeply, but at least hopefully this was high enough level that you can see that this is going to give you just a really, and I use the word potent in here, a really potent set of decision-making tools to use as you run your business.
Kind of see our conversation, Diane, is you pointed out some benefits of having a good job cost system in place, and the things that the rewards you can get from that. I think the biggest thing, if people don't have job costing in place, even if you're a designer, I mean, designers have to keep track of things too. Make that commitment. You're not going to change it today or overnight. I mean, it's just, you got to just start by making the commitment to say, yes, we are going to do the job costing. We're going to get it set up. We're going to make it work. And we're going to keep improving it as we go. So, give yourself time, make that decision and work on it. And before you know it, a year from now, you'll have all your systems in place. You'll have great reports. And it's like, bam, it's like, wow, that was cool.
Yeah. And how did I get along without this before?
Yeah, exactly.
So, you're absolutely right, Dan. My focus, of course, over the years has been on construction, but this is equally applicable to service businesses, and to manufacturing. I mean, job costing really came out of the manufacturing industry. About the only difference between construction and manufacturing is that manufacturing has to deal with inventory. Okay, so they're buying inventory, producing things. So there's that additional layer of complexity. But I've also had clients who do cabinetry. They produce cabinets, and so they're in the construction industry because they sell construction kinds of things. So it applies across construction, manufacturing, and service.
So again, on your next slide, you say go download the presentation for the day, which it's a good presentation. Thank you for doing that. And you're also going to get notified of some videos that Diane has done that really get into some nitty gritty about job costing. And you did an excellent job on these videos, Diane. They're really, really helpful. And I think they'll clarify a ton of things for everybody. So go ahead and get that download, and then you'll be notified first part of the week here about those videos. And Yeah, so that's cool. And
They were a lot of fun. They have animations. They move right along, you
Yep,
know.
yep.
So, yeah, you were
Yeah.
asking me about my passion. I've also found out that I kind of have fun doing animated videos.
Mhm.
Not
Yeah.
animated as in cartoons particularly, but to keep information being provided at a at a rate that people can consume and that they can enjoy watching. So
Exactly. So
that's what I worked on there.
I'll bring this banner
So
up.
that was
John,
fun.
So John, you had some questions.
Yeah, I have a question. I'll stick with job costing for now.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're breaking into the overhead, but let's go back to your scenarios that you had. What I think the biggest one you had was $1 million company, a couple $500,000 jobs.
I'll just back up. Sorry if I'm flipping through screens, but
That's
I
fine.
kind of.
Let's just say you're that company, and you have 3 employees that work out in the field, plus yourself occasionally at least. What level of job costing should I be doing?
Well,
how much detail should I go into?
Yeah, well, the absolute minimum, okay, is you need to be able to track for a job, okay, your payroll costs, including payroll taxes, benefits, and the labor burden, if people have to have trucks. So the labor burden is kind of a separate calculation, but we can get QuickBooks to do it. So I'd say payroll related cost and labor burden,
You have an
materials.
You have an amazing labor burden calculator that you created. It's just like when I saw that, and this was a long time ago, and it's like, holy cow. Yeah. There's a lot of burden involved for labor. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And we have that available out on buildyournumbers.com. Yeah, I've developed several support tools to help people. We've got a pre-done template for construction companies. In QuickBooks, we have some other support tools, month-end procedures, percentage of completion, the employee cost and pricing analyzer. That's the labor burden calculator. So back to your question, John. So payroll and related taxes and burden, okay, materials, subcontractor costs, and all those other, we call them other job costs. Usually they don't come up to a big percentage, but they're your permits and your rentals and things like that. So that's an absolute minimum to assign those into jobs. Now, depending upon what you'd like to see in your estimate versus actual reports, okay, to measure yourself, we can expand that out by job stage. Okay, we can get pretty high level by saying, well, there's materials, labor subs, and other costs for framing, material, labor subs, and other costs for drywall, etc. Major job pieces.
Right.
And then some people prefer to see even more detail. Okay, so maybe within framing, then they're going to want to put the different stages of framing. Okay, so we can, in your QuickBooks Desktop, provide you with a structure to get whatever level of detail you find is most valuable for you to control your costs.
And I would assume that your estimate needs to have the same details.
Yeah, the idea is to try to keep that parallel. Okay. And that's where you can really hone in and control things. Labor, of course, is your riskiest piece.
Yeah.
You assume it's going to be X number of hours at X number of dollars per hour. And you can actually see by stage where were things on or off track.
I think one of the hardest parts of that whole process is creating that system and then sticking to it and communicating it to everybody to make sure everybody else does their part of giving you the information that you can track, that becomes trackable information.
So job costing doesn't really start with keeping track of the cost. It starts with keeping track of what you decided to charge for certain things.
Yeah, well, not what you charge, not the income side.
Right,
okay, so it really should be starting with your estimated costs
Right.
at whatever level of detail you want. From there, in QuickBooks, there's a flow. I don't have it in front of me right now, but there's a flow that you can take your estimated cost and income. You can even convert the estimated cost directly into purchase orders and then the purchase orders into bills. And that gives you speed, accuracy, and control. You don't have to use the purchase order. So that's really the nice thing about QuickBooks is it's very flexible. It's really designed to be a full job costing system standalone if people use the pieces and parts.
Yeah.
The biggest issue is to get your structure set up in the right way, the underlying structure.
If
just
you
like
if you
good
set
blueprints.
it up right, the majority of the work is on the front end.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Just like the majority of work, we're on the designer show.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. A huge amount of the success of the job that you're working on and how the job turns out is what those front end plans are.
Right.
Laying out the right structure and the right details on the front end so that everything can proceed smoothly.
Right.
And it's one of the things I really admire about Dan is what he does to help people learn how to do those designs and so on properly on the front end and creating a smooth job throughout, because having that structure on the front end is key. And then of course, having trained people working on the job and checking your work as you go, those are 3 basic steps for this type of a system as they are in construction. There are a lot of parallels between construction and job costing.
And John, you've gotten pretty good at that too. So let's, so Mike says, if you could create a class or course that lays out examples of what to track, time for various aspects of the design phase, and other cost tracking, many would pay for your time and efforts. Diane, it seems to me you have something like that already, don't you?
Yes, indeed, we do. I have a program out there called the Construction Accounting and Management Program, and they're pre-recorded videos. So over the years, I spent literally thousands of hours working one-to-one with people where I would sit and train them step by step myself.
Yeah.
We'd fix up their systems and get them rolling and running successfully. And, periodically somebody will come back from 5 years ago and say, oh, now we want to do this other thing. Okay. So what I did ultimately was I took my whole system and turned it into an online training program. And the Construction Accounting Management Program, we do have many hours of training out there and several different levels. It's a monthly subscription program. You can get it annually to save some money.
Yeah.
But that's available out there. So
we'll be notifying everybody about that, of course, because you're about to relaunch that, right?
Exactly. Starting this coming week. And Dan will be reaching out to the people on his list. I'll be reaching out to the people on mine. And it's a series of videos that we release over the next couple weeks. And it goes into the benefits of job costing, in more depth, more layers here. And then we also talk about maybe, what's the relationship with your accountant and why they're not going to help you do it and who should be doing it. And we do 27 frequently asked questions. And then the 4th video, I will go in more depth into exactly what's included in the program.
If you want to get notified of that and you don't care about the PDF from today, go ahead and enter your email on that form, and we'll notify you about the course coming up. So you've really priced it affordable. There's no long-term commitment. And you've got a ton of great stuff. I've seen what you've done over the years. And
thank you, man.
Yeah. It's kind of like John and I, when we meet a client that's really messed up a plan, we teach them how to straighten it out. And the next time they do a plan, it's not as messy. And the next time they do that, it's not as messy.
Then they start loving Chief.
Yeah. Then they don't start throwing their computer out the window. Or they stop throwing their computer out the window. And Diane, I know your program's the same way. So it's just,
Thank you.
Take baby steps through the process until they can get it set up and working. And it really is a process, and it works. So
thank you. Yeah. We have people all the time say, I wish I would have found you. Where were you 5 years ago? And we were here. we have to get better at letting people know we're here.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, and I think John and I have both heard that from our clients too. It's like, damn, I wish I would have learned this stuff a long time ago.
Exactly.
It saved a lot of trouble.
I hear myself saying that very often.
Yeah. Anyway, but cool. Well, Diane, hey, thanks for being here. Great information. And again, everybody will get some info out to you about Diane's class coming up. And, check it out. I think you'd really enjoy it. And also, if you're over at Chief Experts Academy, and below the video, if you're watching on the website, the ProAcademy, we're going to be starting a templates training class here a week from Tuesday. It's going to be a 4-part class running you through the whole process of how to set up and use your templates in Chief Architect. So that's part of the ProAcademy membership. So if you're already a member, you can log in and go sign up for the courses over there. Or if you're not a member, you can sign up for ProAcademy and then log in and get that. So that's our little commercial for today. And Diane, I think you got the last word. What do you got?
Well, I'm going to say Dan's a great trainer. He has taught me so many things over the years, not in Chief Architect, but, in a whole variety of other aspects of business. So many thanks to you, Dan, for what you contributed to my life over the years. And I do appreciate today's opportunity to share this information with your crew.
You're very welcome. And that does go both ways, by the way. So thank you. We had a few more comments. Let's just take them real quick. Well, we'll take a minute. Okay. But you say 1 million company, a solo designer. Have you ever seen that possible? Not sure what you mean by that, Mike.
I think he's just talking about maybe just doing design.
Yeah.
If you were building houses, that'd be pretty easy to do.
Yeah.
But if you're a design build, that'd be pretty easy to do as one designer. But especially if you only did 1 or 2 houses a year.
Oh, Mike, this is a great comment. Being a builder or a remodeler takes way more patience and mercy than I have. Builders are amazing people. Contractors are amazing people because they really have to put up with a lot of stuff. Anyway, Diane, that wasn't quite the last word, but anyway, I just thought I'd hit those comments. So thanks again, Diane.
Yep.
You take care, and we'll be talking.
We'll do it again someday.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thanks.
Alrighty. Take care.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
See ya.